The Chicago Bears are no longer asking for a seat at the table. They are pulling up a chair and flipping it over. A quiet shift happened behind the doors of Halas Hall this offseason, deliberate and precise, and the rest of the league is only now realizing what it means. Ben Johnson did not come to Chicago to test ideas or hand out chances. He brought a system built for speed, built for punishment, and built to run through the exact weaknesses the division exposed last year. The pads hit harder now. The play calls land faster. The old excuses are gone. The offense finally looks like it belongs to the quarterback instead of forcing him into a mold that never fit. Caleb Williams spent last season learning how to breathe inside a playbook that was still being written, but year 2 is a completely different animal. The weapons are real. The timing is sharp. The front office spent every single day building an infrastructure around him that does not wait 3 years to win. Yet the offense is barely half the story. What nobody is talking about is how the defense quietly fixed the one package that was eating them alive. They ran that exact formation 74% of the time last year, and it cost them more yards than anyone wanted to admit. Instead of hoping for better luck, they went to the film room, found the leak, and bought the exact fix. This is not about adding flash or chasing headlines. It is about removing doubt, one calculated decision at a time. The front office moved with a quiet confidence that only comes when you know exactly what you are building and the pieces are finally sitting exactly where they need to be. But a blueprint only matters when the man in the center has the right tools to run it. We have to look past the roster upgrades and understand the exact changes that turned a rookie campaign into a launchpad, because the way the coaching staff adjusted to him will decide how high this team can actually climb. Let us break down what changed behind the scenes and why the numbers say this version of Caleb Williams is ready to take over. Caleb Williams spent last year surviving inside a playbook that was still being built around him. Year 2 looks nothing like that quiet learning curve. The front office stripped away the guesswork and handed him a system designed for his exact throwing motion. The pocket feels cleaner now. The decisions come faster. Every snap looks like a calculated strike instead of a hopeful throw. The weapons around him finally match the tempo of his game. DJ Moore commands the deep routes with a physical presence that forces secondaries to choose their poison. Luther Burden adds a burst that stretches defenses wide open, while Cole Kmet turns tight windows into reliable targets over the middle. DeAndre Swift operates in the flat with a quickness that turns simple checks into explosive gains. The offense does not just move the chains anymore, it punishes hesitation. This offensive engine is finally firing on all cylinders, but speed means nothing when the other side of the ball keeps giving those yards right back. The real transformation happened where nobody was looking. Chicago discovered a structural flaw in their most used defensive look, and instead of patching it, they tore it out and rebuilt it from scratch. The fix was not flashy, but it was surgical. Let us look at the exact numbers that exposed the leak and the quiet free agency moves that sealed it shut. 74%. That is how often Chicago put that exact defensive alignment on the field last year, and it quietly drained their entire season. Expected points added against them in that package sat firmly in the red. The front line was solid. The edge rushers held their ground. Yet the moment that fifth defensive back stepped onto the turf, the whole unit lost its edge. Turnover luck papered over the cracks for a while, but banking on lucky bounces is not a strategy. Ryan Poles saw the pattern and refused to gamble again. He targeted 2 veterans who already knew how to thrive inside that exact setup. Cam Lewis arrived from a defense that ran the same look 62% of the time and stayed completely disciplined every single week. Kobe Bryant followed with the same blueprint from Seattle, bringing the exact instincts and range the secondary desperately needed. This was not a splashy headline move. It was a mathematical correction disguised as free agency. Fit always beats reputation when the stakes are this high. Letting Jaquan Brisker walk hurt in the short term. But the math demanded a player who could process reads faster and cover ground without hesitation. The secondary finally has teeth again, and the foundation is set for the next wave of talent. Draft boards do not lie about where a franchise must invest, and Chicago has exactly the ammunition to strike. The front office walked into that war room with a strict plan, and the value waiting at pick 25 changes everything. 9 selections arrived with clear targets instead of desperate guesses. The War Room refused to chase hype or force a name that did not fit the board. At pick 25, they took a safety who reads routes before the quarterback even drops back. Emmanuel McNeil Warren brings a violent physicality to the back end of the field and a knack for forcing turnovers that changes momentum instantly. The pick felt almost too clean for a team that usually overthinks. Day 2 shifted the focus to the trenches where games are actually won. Derek Moore slid off the board at pick 57 with a relentless motor and long arms that disrupt passing lanes before they develop. A quick trade back netted extra capital, and Chicago used it to grab Grayson Halton, a defensive tackle who lives in the backfield and matches the exact physical profile the scheme demands. Every selection connected to a real gap on the roster. The depth rounds brought in Malik Muhammad for boundary coverage and developmental linemen in Logan Jones and J.C. Davis, who could grow into starting roles without stepping on toes. The board never dictated their moves, they dictated the board. But building a roster is only half the equation. New faces always mean shifting expectations for the men already wearing the uniform, and 5 veterans suddenly found themselves watching the selection process with their careers hanging in the balance. Fresh talent does not just fill spots, it reshuffles the entire depth chart. But Tyreek Stevenson sits in the final year of his rookie deal and knows that consistency will either secure his long-term future or hand his starting role to a first-round pick. The flashes are undeniable, but the margin for error vanished the moment Chicago walked into that war room. He is playing for his spot, and the pressure will show up on every rep in training camp. The offensive line and skill positions feel the same heat. Braxton Jones fought to earn a second chance, yet top visits at tackle in round 1 sent a clear message about expectations. TJ Edwards brought steady production to the middle of the field, but the new defensive direction prioritizes sideline-to-sideline speed, which directly challenges his playing time. While Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift watch from the sidelines, knowing that early-round picks could instantly shrink their snap counts and alter their contract timelines. Competition is not a punishment, it is the only way a championship culture breathes. The front office knows that comfort breeds complacency, and they are willing to make uncomfortable moves to keep the standard high. These veterans have proven they belong in this league, but belonging and thriving are two different conversations. The pressure will forge the final roster, but the real test comes when those new pieces actually step onto the practice field and learn how to play alongside each other. 7 weeks. That is the exact window separating a 50-year franchise future from an uncertain exit. The spring legislative session in Illinois ends on May 31st. And the ownership group made one thing perfectly clear at the owner meetings. Late spring means a final decision on where the next stadium rises from the ground. This is not about empty threats or negotiation tactics. It is about securing a financial framework that actually works before the calendar runs out. Chicago already owns 300 acres of land in Arlington Heights and plans to fund the construction with private capital. They are asking for tax certainty and local financing options that make a $5 billion project possible without draining public coffers. Indiana responded to a similar request in a matter of months, while Illinois continues to debate. George McCaskey wants the team to stay, but patience has limits when the financial foundation dictates everything from free agency spending to long-term franchise health. The deadline forces both sides to reveal their true intentions. Revenue streams, player acquisition strategies, and generational legacy all hang on a single legislative vote. Football wins keep fans excited in the short term, but infrastructure decisions define a franchise for decades. While politicians debate, the War Room is already executing its final roster moves, and the next prospect on their list solves a positional puzzle that has frustrated the coaching staff for 2 full seasons. A single name dropped during pre-draft visits and immediately shifted the entire defensive conversation. Shokayante Scott walked into Halas Hall carrying a tape that defied every traditional size requirement for a defensive back. He led the entire college field in blitz frequency and pressure rate, turning short zones into turnover machines. 2 interceptions last season both found the end zone, and he added 13 tackles for loss while playing through a significant foot injury. The tape does not just show speed, it shows obsession. The schematic fit makes the selection almost undeniable. Kyler Gordon has operated as one of the most versatile backs on the roster for 2 seasons, and the coaching staff openly discussed moving him towards safety to balance the secondary. The only question was who would command the slot without sacrificing coverage discipline. Scott earned his nickname by living inside that exact space and dominating it with physicality that does not back down. One selection instantly clears 2 positional holes. This kind of targeted acquisition never happens by accident. The front office studied the exact gaps in their defensive alignment and found a player whose natural instincts fill them perfectly. The secondary transforms from a reactive unit into a proactive force that dictates the opposing offense instead of reacting to it. Every piece finally locks into place, and the full picture reveals a franchise that stopped guessing and started building. The paper version of this roster already outpaces the team that took the field last year. That is not speculation. It is the direct result of solving specific problems with exact answers instead of throwing money at headlines. The foundation sits firm, the direction points straight ahead, and the upcoming draft weekend becomes the final catalyst. The right selections will accelerate everything into a sudden surge. The wrong ones will expose what still needs reinforcement. The division sets a brutal standard. Detroit moved fast and built a machine that demands respect from week 1. Chicago is not trying to copy that blueprint anymore. They are constructing a parallel identity that relies on schematic precision, calculated risk, and a secondary that finally stops bleeding points in its most used package. 4 early selections give them the exact ammunition needed to plug every remaining gap with starters who can handle physical, divisional football. The stadium decision answers generational questions. The draft answers football questions. Both timelines collide in a 7-week window that will shape this organization for the next 50 years. Hope has been replaced by execution. The quiet work behind the scenes finally matches the loud expectations on the field. The rest of the conference sees it too, and they are realizing that the gap closed while nobody was paying attention. The build is real, and the league better start taking notes.